Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday, September 25th. Hopefully it's light enough. I'm actually inside today because I am no longer in LA. I'm back in a desert, the desert of Phoenix, Arizona. So therefore, it is warm outside. It's supposed to be close to 100 degrees today in Phoenix, and so therefore I am staying inside of some air conditioning so that I do not have to have my phone overheat. So welcome to the show, welcome to the show today. Welcome Anna, hello. Welcome Louise, welcome Amber, welcome Stacy, welcome new people and existing followers. Love you guys. Thank you for your support. Again, it was interesting on my drive yesterday from Los Angeles to the desert is I'd never driven that road before, and they have like mountains that have actual cactuses that are on them. So it was quite fun to look at these cactuses growing where it was like nothing else that could grow, just a bunch of rocks and stuff. And it's just amazing to me that there's anything that can grow where there's like no water, no rain, and 100 degrees to 120, whatever, 130 every day. It's just crazy to think that things like that can grow. So anyway, I'll share this with a couple of groups and we will get started. Alrighty, there we go. So this morning, woke up at 1:30 a.m. I've been doing that quite frequently lately, is waking up around 1:30 and 2 after falling asleep, I don't know, around 10:30 or 11. And so I get a couple of hours of sleep and up and at 'em and fully functioning all day. It's has to be the Lord, because otherwise the old Nelson would have been tuckered out. So anyway, it's kind of fun to see how you can function on a few hours and not be completely falling asleep throughout the rest of the afternoon or the evening. So welcome Sevilla, welcome Paula, hello people. So today the Lord had me this morning wake up early and wrote a blog. A lot of people, I guess I posted a thing on Facebook that I didn't think there'd be anybody that would, hardly anybody would maybe resonate. And it talked about, do you trust yourself more than God? And it's funny, when I posted that on my ministry page, I have a lot more people that are on my ministry page that like it. And so there's been several hundred that have liked that. And I'm like, really? I don't know, I thought that was going to be like a 50 or 60 liker day, but a lot of people it's resonating with. And so the topic of the day is, how much do you really trust God? Do you really trust God? So hello Tina Marie, hello Michelle. So how much do we really trust God? A lot of times people will say, well, of course I trust God, when the rubber hits the road, meets the road, do you really trust the Lord? When you totally trust the Lord, then you are going to never walk in fear. You would never be anxious, never be fearful, never be worried about your circumstances. And then you're always going to walk in humility. You're going to be humble and have love and have peace. And that should be what a standard strong Christian would be walking out every day. I know in the past I wasn't that. Back in 2008, I was a clueless Christian. Like the majority of the Christians that I knew went to my large non-denominational church of whatever, 4,000, 5,000 people, is they were preached these messages that were plain vanilla messages, and then you'd go home and have all these people fighting and arguing in their marriages and going through divorces, and kids that were, ending up on drugs and hating their parents and all this stuff, and it was a mess. So when I came out of that and started getting mentored from a guy from California, just a few phone calls every month that we'd have, I started being taught things I never heard before, such as walking in authority, the same authority as Jesus Christ, and being able to actually pray and then get healed instantly, instead of praying when you have no other alternative after you've gone to the doctors and they've told you you have cancer, in your spine or whatever. So, that's just a major, major revelation that I never heard. Not one pastor that I ever hear preach about the authority, walking in that. I know there's churches that do that, but there's very few larger churches, it seems, that would ever touch that. And so they preach these messages, unfortunately, that don't positively affect the people's lives. The first thing I always said, if I was a pastor, that I would do for a person coming into the church is to take them through deliverance. They need to go through and choose to forgive all those that hurt them. They have to understand how they can see them through Christ's eyes, why they hurt them, because they were hurting. And that's exactly why that person hurt you, so you can choose to forgive them. Because if you don't forgive them for whatever they did to you that was horrible, then you cannot be forgiven. And the enemy has a legal right to stay on you. And we see a lot of people that have sickness and disease on their bodies because they have a lot of, sorry about that, because they have anger towards people that have hurt them. And they have to forgive. In fact, I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona. Oh, there's a bird walking on my car. I can see my car outside. But there's a ministry called Hardcore Christianity that's like right next door to the home I'm staying in here. And I was just talking to one of the directors here, and he told me that, when people come in there, that's the first thing they ask is, do you have any resentment towards anyone? Do you have any anger towards anyone? Because those are healing blockers. If you have any hatred, and so again, those that have gone through the most tumultuous pains and abuse growing up will oftentimes be the ones that have the sickness in the bodies, because they have a lot of anger towards them. That's how the enemy works. And so when we grow up and get hurt by our parents, by either not having a father, not having a mother, or having a mean father, mean mother, or one that you felt rejected by, or you have incest or any type of sexual violations, then that will cause the enemy to help you hear his voice to steer you away from trusting the Lord. Because if you couldn't trust your dad or your mom because they weren't there for you, then how can you trust God? Because your earthly father is to represent the heavenly Father. So there's so many people, if I was a pastor, I would take them through deliverance immediately as soon as they came to the church. I know in some of the foreign countries they do that. I think in Africa, those that know their authority, they will take them through deliverance once they give their life to Christ. And then the second thing that you must do is you must make sure that you don't have any pride, because pride is a huge blocker of healings. And if you've been hurt deeply, then the enemy is going to be speaking to you. It's going to become a familiar voice. You're going to hear that voice. You're going to buy into what it's saying you can't trust anyone. You couldn't trust your dad, so you can't trust your husband. So you can't trust him to make any decisions because they're going to turn out to be bad. Therefore, you control and you manipulate. Same thing with men that have been hurt by their fathers or mothers. They end up controlling, manipulating, and hurting their wives. It's the number one reason is people don't pay attention to the thoughts that they're having. They think all of their thoughts are their own. Majority of their thoughts are not. They're coming from the enemy. And they're buying into that. And the enemy's telling them to be mean, control, manipulate, don't trust anybody. And I'll read this, Proverbs 3:5-8. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. It will be health to your flesh and strength to your bones. That's so true. Again, I refer oftentimes to the movie The Shack. And again, I watched The Shack 3 times after not watching it for a while before when it first came out, because it was controversial and so forth. So when I watched The Shack, of course, the main character gets abused by his father in a shack. He ends up hating his father. And of course, he does not trust God. And so that's why they had God be a woman in the movie. And so, but there's a scene where they take him into the cave and he ends up having to be God and judge who goes to heaven, who goes to hell. And he sees all these mean people in the visions they show, the dream or the videos they show, and he says, that goes to hell, they go to hell, they go to hell. And then they show a little boy. He said, well, that little boy shouldn't go to hell. He's an innocent little boy. And then they pan back and they show him getting beaten up by his father. Well, that was his grandfather. So when he can see and understand that the only reason his father beat him was because his father was beaten by his grandfather, then he can understand and he can choose to forgive. And that's what's so hard for people to do, is to do that. And so what happens is, developing out of all of that is this spirit of pride, because you're so used to hearing that voice saying you can't trust anybody. Nobody can do it right like you can. So it builds up and puffs you up into saying, well, no one's going to be able, I can't trust anybody. So if you see people that are managers, I used to have a manager who was very prideful. He had these spirits. I didn't know it at the time, but he was very berating of me. He wouldn't trust me. He was a micromanager. It was just very irritating. And he had managed a group of salespeople before, 12 or 13 different salespeople. Well, all these salespeople hated him because he was a micromanager, but he acted all sweet and nice to everybody else. And so unless you reported to him directly, you would think he was the greatest guy ever. So when I ended up ultimately reporting to him, along with a couple other people, we were just dying on the vine, thinking, oh my gosh, why are we having to report to this guy? And they took him away after a couple of months, which was thankful, but then he came back like a year later, and he was even more controlling and manipulative, and he had more people he was managing in our alliance area. So finally, I had enough. I had never done this before. I decided to go to the HR department and talk about it and say, listen, this guy, you need to correct him because he's doing things to hurt people. People are like literally getting sick to their stomachs when it's Sunday night because they know they're going to have to start getting berated again on Monday through Friday. And so they finally confronted, well, actually they talked to all the other people that reported to him first, and then they confronted him. Then at that point, he had to take sensitivity training. They didn't do deliverance, unfortunately. They should have done deliverance. Would have been way better because it could have helped him. But ultimately, I ended up leaving the company. I got hired at a better company. Actually, it was out in California, an internet banking company. And then he ultimately got let go after, maybe 6 months later or something like that. So ultimately, many of us have pride. We think we have all these, we try to figure things out on our own because we don't trust God. We don't trust Him to provide for our needs. I remember going to a conference, a large conference, and one of the leaders pointed out to this one woman and said, quit trying to figure things out. And I knew right away that woman was struggling with hearing the voice of the enemy, having fear, not being able to trust the Lord. And there's so many of us that can't trust God, so we end up trusting in ourselves, saying, well, I'm going to have to fix this. I'm going to have to fix my finances. And so oftentimes the Lord will take you into a position, take you into a desert season where you can't change anything. I remember He took me out, the Lord, of my job as He was preparing to transition me into full-time ministry. And I couldn't do one thing about it. He told me, he said, Nelson, you can't even find a job if you are going to look for it. So my wife put pressure on me to go find the job. So Harry, I'm trying to look for jobs and I can't find them. I'd apply, nothing worked out. God's like, you're wasting your time. And I'm like, well, then tell my wife that. Of course, she couldn't hear because she was hearing the voice of the enemy, putting pressure on me. And so it was just a stressful time, because I'm trying to be obedient to God and yet get along with my wife who's being affected and tormented by the spirits of Jezebel and Leviathan, prompting her to come against me. And so ultimately I listened to God because I'm like, listen, I'm going to listen to God. I'm not going to listen to someone that's being tormented by demons because that's going to hurt me accomplishing what God wants. And so it took about a year before He actually finally said, now I'm going to give you a job, which was a director of a new software company for the state of Indiana. And I started making the company grow. I started getting paid, but just a little bit because that guy had the Jezebel spirit as well. He lied and lied and lied and lied, promised things, wouldn't deliver on anything. I mean, he was just such a liar, and he had the software system that didn't work. He kept showing it to people and saying that it did. I mean, it was just such a tragedy. And the guy, I understood that his father left him when he was 5 years old or something, divorced his mother. And of course, it hurt him. He picked up the spirit, so he's hearing the voice of the enemy, directing him, causing him to have pride. He was extremely prideful, very arrogant, and always trying to figure things out. And that's what exactly happens to us, is we don't trust God for Him to provide for our needs. We end up having to try to fix things. So when I went through my scenario of the desert and where I didn't have any choice, I could not get a job anywhere. I had to simply trust God for everything. Ultimately, He took me out of that job into a job where I got paid $19 an hour. There's the number 19. Again, I tell people that is God's stamp of approval, that I'm in the right place at the right time doing what He wants me to do. And so I got paid $19 an hour. at a company called Stericycle, and I was the 19th person they interviewed. So how funny is that? And I worked there for 6 months, and then I ended up giving plasma as well. Plasma is where you have to sit down in a chair and you give your blood, and they give you back, I don't know, whatever, some white or red blood cells back. I think it's white, I don't know. Can't remember what it was, but I know it was painful. I know it was, you got paid $75 a week for doing it twice. You can only do it twice a week. And it help me make ends meet, and so I was trusting the Lord to provide. He provided that job. He actually provided another job where I got paid $14 an hour to score tests. And you had to have a college degree to do that. So all these college people were doing that. And then I ended up starting to write my first couple of books when that happened. And then people actually that were there was probably 500 people there that would score these tests that didn't have regular jobs and are trying to make ends meet. And I remember that I took my books to work and some of the people wanted to buy them. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I'll just give it to you. And they're like, oh no, we want to pay it $10, And so they were starting to buy my books, and people that weren't even Christians. And I'm like, wow. I had a manager that wasn't a Christian, but she had a book club. So she wanted the book. So it started to help change some lives. But I remember I had to stay at peace. And I was at peace, even though I had barely enough money to pay for anything. My son Austin needed a lot of money, so I ended up having to help him and give him money. And I'm like, really? I'm like, this is so bad. I don't have any money to pay for anything. I can't buy, a very nice shampoo. I couldn't buy the cologne I wanted to buy and all this stuff. And it was a process, though, of humbling me, taking every single bit of piece of pride out of me when I used to make, $200,000 a year. And now I was lucky to make, whatever, $8,000 in a year. I mean, it's crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. But I had to not be angry at God. I had to not to blame him, get mad, complain to a bunch of people. I had to go through it. I had to go through it. And you have to trust the Lord. Trust him for everything. And so I know a lot of times people would say, well, you should always be rich. God should always be blessing you. I'm like, no, not true. Not when he takes you through a certain season in your life. It's a season of enduring. A lot of people, if they are called into a full-time ministry, have to go through the season of where they have no money. They can't do anything about it. They can't do one thing about it. And so what it does is it helps to humble you, because if you're going to be blessed with a very impactful ministry that's going to have a lot of money coming into it, then you have to be trusted and have your heart changed completely to Christ's heart. If you don't, there's too many people right now that are in the church that are prideful, that are arrogant, that are in leadership. God's going to humble them. He's going to purify them. I wrote the book Pure and Spotless, came out a couple weeks ago, and it's starting to do its job. It's getting people aware that, man, it doesn't matter what you do. If you prophesy, if you pray in tongues, and all this stuff, what matters is your heart. What is your heart like? Is it pure? And what is your mind like? Is it like Christ? Because if it's not, and you're doing sinful things behind closed doors, hurting people, God does not like people hurting people. The church is supposed to be where it's safe and protected. And it doesn't mean that you're going to be sinless, but if you do sin, then you're going to repent for it. You're going to ask for forgiveness. There's too many people that have a sheared conscience, that have no problems with hurting people, saying things to people to hurt them even worse. So anyway, it's just not good. Same thing, we try to figure things out oftentimes with our health. I had to learn, I embraced it as far as learning about divine health and praying for healing in my body. I didn't think that was possible before. I never heard of that before until my mentor started teaching me that. And I remember I had a toothache that came on me really strong one night. On a scale of 1 to 10, it was a 10 out of 10. It was really bad. And I remember getting up in the morning, going down at 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to chew ice. It didn't make any difference. And I would have gone to the hospital if I would have thought they could have cured it, but they couldn't. So I couldn't do anything. And the Lord said to me, use the authority. I'm like, what? That'll never work. Of course, it worked on my son when I prayed, commanded the demons to leave him after 10 years of hell that I endured because he had gotten essentially molested. So I said, well, what can it hurt? I'll take a stab at this. So then I said, I command you, spirit of infirmity, to go in Jesus' name. And as soon as I said that, the pain was instantly gone. And I remember smacking my mouth thinking, what? How did that work? I just spoke words out. And it was like those words carried authority, the authority of Jesus Christ. I'm like, you're kidding. Oh my gosh, we can actually do the same thing as Jesus said we could do in the Bible? Man, I didn't hear any pastor ever tell me we could do that. So then thereafter, I started learning about healing in my body and trusting that God was going to provide the healing. Sometimes I didn't get healed instantly, like when my back disc popped out and I was in pain, extreme pain, the worst pain of my life. I prayed and commanded it to go. It didn't go. So I called my mentor and said, what happened? It doesn't work. He's like, well, you given up already? I'm like, no, I never give up. I'm very determined. He said, then don't give up. Continue to thank the Lord that you're healed. So I did. And by the end of the night, I was like 50% healed. And then the next day, I continued to thank the Lord I was healed. And by the end of that night, I was like 90% healed. And the next morning, I was 100%. I put my shoes on and went outside and I ran 3 miles, pounding on the pavement, thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't take anything for this. I didn't take Tylenol, ibuprofen, nothing. And I got healed in 2 days. I'm like, this really does work. I go, sometimes it's instant, sometimes it's progressive. And I said, why was it progressive to my mentor? He said, well, because sometimes, the enemy is wanting to persist and the Lord wants to continue to strengthen your faith to believe that no matter how long it takes, you're going to be healed by him. Because if, a lot of people would just give up. If they pray and it doesn't work, they say, well, it doesn't work. And then the enemy wins. So I'm like, well, then I am not going to ever give up. And the Lord told me, great, because he said, as long as you don't give up, as long as you don't doubt, as long as you don't get in fear, false evidence appearing real, I will heal you of everything that comes against you the rest of your life. And I have been since 2009, been healed from everything. I dropped my health insurance in 2012, haven't taken Tylenol, ibuprofen, nothing. And it was just really cool to see all this play out. I had a bulge in my back the size of a golf ball, and it took 6 weeks before it got dissolved. So I'm not giving up, and again, the enemy was trying to ping me with thoughts saying this is cancer, this is a tumor, blah, 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 blah. And I didn't let him get that entire sentence to me. I shut it down because I knew if I let him speak that, I would start to get into fear. I would have to go to the doctor because that's where my faith would be at that point. Instead of him, I didn't trust him at that point. And so it's a balance. It's a challenge. It's a battle that all of us individually have to go through. I remember Kenneth Hagin. He walked in the divine authority, divine health as well. And his son, Kenneth W. Hagin, who took over his ministry out in Broken Arrow, who actually prayed for me, him and his wife Lynette. So anyway, Kenneth Sr. told his son when he turned I think 18 and a half or whatever, moved out, he said, now you're on your own. You have to learn your own authority. And you have to walk it out because I'm not going to pray for you anymore. I can't. You've now become an adult. So therefore, you have to learn this yourself. So many things that I have learned now, and again, I rarely have any type of a symptom that comes on me anymore. I may have, I don't know. It's been a while since I've had a runny nose, but, you just look at them as symptoms that the enemy's trying to come on. Don't you speak it out and saying, I'm getting sick, I'm getting bronchitis, getting pneumonia. Again, I used to get bronchitis all the time. I used to get pneumonia all the time. I came out to Southern California, I caught it, I almost died. And then the doctor said, you'll have it the rest of your life. You'll always be susceptible to that. And I did for something like 10 straight years. I would have to take Zithromax pills. Now, I don't get it at all. I can go running outside when it's cold and I don't worry about it. So again, trusting God, saying that you trust God and really trusting God, that's where the rubber meets the road. And I'll say this on relationships. So there's a lot of people in relationships that want to be married to a godly man, to a godly wife, and they end up rushing into it because they're alone. They're feeling alone, they want to have protection, they want to have security, and so they end up settling for someone that is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Instead of listening to the Lord, trusting him, being stretched, doing what you're supposed to do, because oftentimes he's trying to change you, trying to make you into a more godly man or woman, trying to get you set free from the demons that are tormenting you so that you can then be prepared for your future spouse. And then at the right time, he'll bring the spouse to you. You won't have to look for them, And when that happens, it's a great, glorious thing, a beautiful thing. When you're out there trying to make it happen, and the enemy may even try to bring someone to you that's not, you have some red flags saying, I don't think they're going to be the right person. They might be not the best person, but gee, I'm lonely. I'm going to go ahead and marry him anyway. And then after you marry him, like, oh my gosh, what did I do? I messed up again. The person's mean to me. They're controlling. They acted all sweet and nice beforehand. And then before you know it, it's bad. And so I'm going to read this. This is Psalms 37, 4 through 40. It says, "Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart." And he does. He wants to give you the desires of your heart. You know, what good father doesn't want to do that? But he knows that, like, if he gives you a whole bunch of money and your heart is not pure, you're going to end up falling farther away from him, closer to the enemy. It says, "Commit your way to the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. He shall bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him." Too many people that hear the spirits of Jezebel, Leviathan, do not wait. They rush ahead. They got to take it, bull by the horns, like they say in Texas, and make it happen. There's so many people that do that in their lives, and then they end up messing it up. They mess it up. They screw it up. And then the Lord has to do a plan C and a plan D and a plan F and a plan Z in their life. And they don't get plan A because they end up rushing ahead. So it says, "Rest in the Lord, wait patiently for him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who brings wicked schemes to pass. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret, it only causes harm." So don't worry, don't fear. If you're worrying and fearing, you're on the enemy's territory. And again, that's what that spirit of Jezebel has underneath it, is the spirit of fear. It comes in because of the trauma from father wounds, mother wounds, and sexual violations. So it says, "Cease from anger, forsake wrath. Do not fret, it only causes harm. For evildoers shall be cut off. But those who wait on the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. For yet a little while, and the wicked shall be no more. Indeed, you will look carefully for his place, but it shall be no more. But the meek shall inherit the earth." So if you're meek, you have meekness like Jesus did. That's strength under control. So that means you know your authority. He knew his authority, but he controlled it. He didn't zap everybody that was like Pharisees trying to come and kill him. He knew he had the authority. He could do that stuff, but he didn't. So, "But the meek shall inherit the earth and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace." Again, if you don't trust God, you'll never have peace. I've seen it all the time with people, and they're just anxious and they're fearful and like, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to do this. I want to be perfect. It's like, no, relax. If you're being stressed out because you're having to make a decision and you don't want to make a bad decision or a wrong decision, ask the Lord for confirmation. He'll either give you a dream, he'll give you signs. I see signs everywhere I go. I see big signs with words on them. I see small signs. I see exit numbers that say like 19, or I have 19 miles to turn off, or all this confirmation. And again, if it's a bigger decision, he's going to give you more confirmations. And then you can always be at peace. There's so many times we end up stressing, striving, fighting, worrying, being anxious about things. And it's just a waste of time. And it ends up causing us to have physical problems in our body, where we can get a lot of diseases and so forth from that. You can get sick to your stomach because you're worried so much. All that stuff that comes in, it's like, and you have to take medications for it, and you're just a mess. You don't want to be a mess. So the wicked plots against the just and gnashes at him with his teeth. The Lord laughs at him, for he sees that his day is coming. The wicked have drawn the sword and have bent their bow to cast down the poor and needy, to slay those who are of upright conduct. Their sword shall enter their own heart, and their bows shall be broken. So think about how many times people do you wrong. A lot of people, in fact, I was talking to somebody, I think it was yesterday, where they were like speaking curses against another ministry, or curses against another person. And I'm like, really? I'm like, don't be doing that. That's like witchcraft. Don't be doing that. Let the Lord, you can pray that the Lord brings their circumstances in a way to help them see the truth, or to let their scales be removed from their eyes, but don't be doing any type of witchcrafting to people and controlling, manipulating, and saying, I just pray that they get sick and that they die and blah, blah, blah. No, don't do that. So their sword shall enter their own heart, and their bows shall be broken. A little that a righteous man has is better than the riches of many wicked. For the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but the Lord upholds the righteous. The Lord knows the days of the upright, and their inheritance shall be forever. They shall not be ashamed in the evil time, and in the days of famine they shall be satisfied. But the wicked shall perish. And the enemies of the Lord, like the splendor of the meadows, shall vanish. Into smoke they shall vanish away. The wicked borrows and does not repay. And how many times have you had someone that does not repay you? They promise they're going to pay you back, and then they don't do it. What do? Do you get mad at them? Do you say, hey, you promised this, and start getting into strife and fighting? No, a servant of the Lord must not strive, but be gentle in all their ways. Give it to God. Let him resolve it for you. They may end up not paying you anything back, but the Lord can pay you back. I have that happen all the time. Someone may promise me a certain amount of money or whatever. If they don't come through for me, I don't stress and strive about it. And I may bring it up and let them know about it once. And if they do nothing about it, then I give it to God. I go about my way, and then God will provide. Okay, for those blessed by him shall inherit the earth, but those cursed by him shall be cut off. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholds him with his hand. I have been young, and now am old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his descendants begging bread. He is ever merciful and lends, and his descendants are blessed. Depart from evil and do good, and dwell forevermore. For the Lord loves justice. I'm going to stop there. So that speaks to, I think, a lot of us. So when you're obedient to the Lord, you're doing what you're supposed to do, and somebody wrongs you, the Lord will be your judge. He will correct what needs to be corrected without you taking it into your own hands. Too many people want to take it into their own hands. There are times when the Lord will have you speak the truth about someone that did something wrong to you. In my case, I remember the church that did something wrong to me. It was, really, really bad. And the Lord gave me a dream that he was going to shut the church down. They had 200 people, a lot of Jezebels, a lot of Leviathan, prideful people. The senior pastor had it. They were preaching that there was no such thing as a Jezebel spirit, and if you went to hell, God would either burn you up or he would give you one more chance to get out. It's just a bunch of horrible stuff. And they were hurting good people. I went through hell, and I tried to get help, and he told me to get out of his church and not to talk to any of his people. He treated me really, really badly. I could have really hated him. And the Lord's like, nope, this is not between you, Nelson, and your spouse, your wife. This is not between you and that specific church. This is between you and the rest of the world, the ministry that I've called you to. So he said, give them to me. And so what happened was, I had a dream that God was going to shut the church down. There was like 20 people left in the church. And I'm like, what? And I woke up from the dream. He's like, what day of the week do you think the church service was at? I'm like, probably Wednesday. There was nobody there. He said, nope, that's a Sunday. That's a Sunday morning. And I'm like, nuh-uh. He's like, yeah, watch. And so they end up coming to confront me. I end up having to confront them back because I wanted to get along with them. I'm like, Lord, shouldn't I just get along with them? That's what I want to do. I don't want to strive and fight. He's like, well, was that the goal that Elijah had with Jezebel, the showdown on Mount Carmel? I'm like, no. He goes, was that the goal of Jesus, to get along with Satan? I'm like, no. He said, well, then that's not your goal. Your goal is to confront them for the sin that they're in. They were preaching wrong. They were, son-in-law was taking advantage of not paying for a car loan, driving the car, him and his wife, for 6 months, and was not repentive about it. So the Lord ended up shutting the church down ultimately, and it was gone. So let the Lord be the one that vindicates you. So it says again, the mouth of the righteous speaks wisdom, and his tongue talks of justice. The law of his God is in his heart. None of his steps shall slide. The wicked watches the righteous and seeks to slay him. The Lord will not leave him in his hand, nor condemn him when he is judged. Wait on the Lord and keep his way, and he shall exalt you to inherit the land. When the wicked are cut off, you shall see it. I have seen the wicked in great power, and spreading himself like a native green tree. Yet he passed away, and behold, he was no more. Indeed, I sought him, but he could not be found. Mark the blameless man, and observe the upright, for the future of that man is peace. But the transgressors shall be destroyed together. The future of the wicked shall be cut off. But the salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He is their strength in the time of trouble. And the Lord shall help them and deliver them. He shall deliver them from the wicked and save them, because they trust in him. So again, that's the whole crux of this is we need to trust God for everything, not just say that we trust him. So if you're going through a season in the desert, the Lord told me to come out to the desert and there'd be something significant happen to me. And there was. I'll tell more about this later in a future broadcast, but there was something very significant that happened when I went out to the desert. A tremendous blessing, a huge blessing. And I had the trust in the Lord to do that. I didn't want to go out to the desert. I wanted to stay in LA. LA, it's like mid 70s or 80s, and it's not a desert. And so when I went out to the desert, I did finish my book, and some things happened thereafter. And it's something that the Lord wanted to bless me with, but I had to be obedient. I had to trust him. So there's so many times we don't trust the Lord. We end up taking things into our own hands, and we screw it up, and we ruin it, and we end up hurting other people because we try to figure everything out. I know a lot of people, when it comes to ministries, trying to put pressure on people to give money. I've seen that throughout my travels, before I started coming into the full-time ministry myself. I would attend these conferences and they would actually try to put guilt trips on people to give, or say, there's going to be X amount of people sowing X amount, and try to put them on a pedestal. Like, you can come up on stage, all those that give this certain amount. And I'm like, no, it's not the way to do it. The Lord told me, he said the way to do it is to say, let the Holy Spirit speak to you, and then donate whatever the Holy Spirit tells you. A lot of people are just manipulators. That's witchcraft, when you're trying to control and manipulate people. That's exactly what some of the churches are doing, trying to manipulate and control. Because why? They don't trust God to provide. And so, it's truth, baby. It's truth. And you can tell people that don't trust the Lord because they're anxious, they're fearful, they get angry, they try to control, they manipulate, they lie, they do all this stuff. That's the enemy stuff. If you're a true Christian, you're going to be at peace. You're not going to worry about anybody. You're not going to strive. You're not going to argue. You're going to have fun. You're going to enjoy your life. Like this morning, I went outside. I didn't know where I was going to go for my prayer walk, and I'm in the desert. So I'm like, well, where am I going to go? Well, the Lord said, look up park. So I found a park, and it's beautiful. Oh my gosh, got to see the sunrise. I took a picture, put it on Facebook, and I was just blown away. It's one of the most beautiful, luscious places I've ever been. Water everywhere, palm trees, just glorious. And the Lord's like, I love the faith that you have, Nelson, because I can take you anywhere. I can tell you to go west for 2.5 months, and you can have like 5 appointments, and then I schedule it along the way. I was so blessed by, he gave me a couple of days off where I could go to Lake Tahoe. And then I was able to have a significant sign that came upon me that was just very blessing. And I enjoyed what the Lord was doing, trying to love on me, trying to encourage me, and to have more peace. How many of us don't want to have more peace in our lives? I know what it's like to have these prophetic words spoken over me and then not see anything like it is going to happen circumstantially. It might look like it was completely off track. The church was like believing the lies of my wife and kicking me out, not talking to me, treating me horribly, having no money. I was like driving a car that needed to be repaired. I couldn't, I was like, God, what are you doing to me? He's like, I'm stretching you, Nelson, so that you trust me and have faith for some crazy stuff that I'm going to take you into. He goes, and if you don't go through this, then I can't take you where I'm going to go to. I'm not going to take you into the promised land that I promised until you've gone through the desert season and you trusted me for everything and you don't complain about it. We can't complain like the Israelites did, because look what happened to them. They all died out in the desert. And I can see how you can quickly die in the desert because it's hot out here. 100 degrees, 0% humidity or whatever it is. It's so dry, and you have to drink water constantly. So, all that being said, the Lord wants to bless us. He wants us to trust him, though, with everything. All your circumstances, trust him and learn your authority. Walk in that authority. You got to know your authority in Christ and walk it out. You can't just not know your authority, because then you're going to end up having all these thoughts from the enemy coming in, tormenting you, getting you to get into fear, worry, not being able to walk into the calling the Lord's called you into. You know, it's a stretching process, and you get stronger when you lift weights than if you don't lift weights at all. Those weights symbolize oftentimes enemy stuff coming against you, circumstances, people speaking lies about you. You know, count it all joy, laugh about it, no worries ever. That really ticks the enemy off. Have fun, put on praise music, thank the Lord in advance. Remember, I don't know if I shared this with you guys, but my daughter, when I went through my divorce with my first wife, we had shared custody, and my daughter wanted to live with me full time. She was being controlled a lot by her mom in unhealthy ways. And so the Lord just said, thank me for it in advance. Thank me for it. Trust me that I'm going to bring her to you full time, and she will live with you without going to court to fight this. Take your battle to the spirit realm, not in the flesh. It's way cheaper. And so you may have to wait longer, though. So it didn't happen overnight. I had to thank the Lord that I had full custody of her. And I had to thank him every morning for about 15, 20 minutes and really believe it and thank him. And then after a month, it still didn't happen. After 2 months, still didn't happen. 3 months. My daughter's given up way past at this point. It's never going to happen. And then finally, about 4 months later, she called me and said, you won't believe this. Mom's going to drop me off full time. And I'm like, really? Well, thank God. Praise the Lord. So she didn't have the constant control, manipulation put on her, you know, from my ex-wife anymore. She was able to have a little more, you know, normalcy in her life. And so anyway, it's a thing that we all have to walk through. We all have to understand and to walk it out every day. We have to trust God for everything and thank him for it in advance, and then listen to his voice. Again, if you can't hear him speaking to you, if you've got Jezebel, Leviathan, you have to get delivered. Otherwise, you will be in fear, you will be in anxiety, you will not be able to get healed from a lot of things until you get that deliverance, which you can watch that on my YouTube videos. Go out to Nelson Schuman 67, my channel. Go out to the playlist that says videos to get delivered, and then watch it. And you can deliver it anytime you want by going through that. You have to choose to forgive those that hurt you. You have to humble yourself and then walk that out. So my plans are, I'm meeting today and tomorrow with a couple of leaders here in Phoenix. I'm not planning to do any ministry. I think there's one woman that was trying to get something to happen in one of the evenings. If it does, I'll let you guys know. Otherwise, I'm planning to leave Thursday and then head on over to New Mexico, to Portales, New Mexico for Friday night. I will be there doing a deliverance session at 7 o'clock and then training equipping on Saturday from 1 to 5. And then I am tentative at this point, being in the Dallas area. There's a lady there trying to coordinate things, and things have not gone the way that should have gone. So at this point, I may end up heading somewhere else for a week and just taking the week off, essentially. But I will be in Houston now. This just came in, just got scheduled today. It's on my website, thanks to Tina, and my Facebook page. October the 11th at 7 p.m. We'll be in Cypress Spring, Texas, which is north of Houston. And then I'm doing my TV show recordings that week. Then I'm heading to Tennessee. Then that's the 14th. Doing a family reunion deliverance on the 13th, and then the 14th at Chickasaw State Park will be open to the public. Deliverance, I think it's at 2 o'clock or something. And then October 21st, I'll be in Kentucky. And then I'll be heading to South Carolina for some, I guess you could call it some personal ministry matters. So looking to do a TV show in Greenville, and maybe take some time off for a couple of days, and we'll see where the Lord goes from there. So anyway, I'll be in New Orleans as well, November the 9th and 10th. So anyway, I just speak blessings over everybody right now that's watching. Rochelle, no, I don't have any plans to come to Chicago right now. Again, what I most likely will do is to spend the winter months in the Florida or the South area of the United States, because it's warmer than going up north, because I know it snows and freezing cold last year. And the Lord told me last year, Thanksgiving time, where do you want to spend the holidays? I said, I don't know, probably Texas or Florida. And that's exactly what he arranged. So I will probably do some ministry in the early part of 2019 in Florida and Texas in the South. And then I can go up to north. I'm planning to be, I think it's in, I don't know, we haven't set the dates yet, but probably mid to late February, early March in Cleveland, Ohio. So, anyways, so anyway, yeah, I'm not gonna give the dates yet for where I'm gonna be at in South Carolina because that's some personal time I'm taking. So, anyways, I will let you guys go so that I can get back to my day out here in the desert and let you guys get back to your day. Let's see, will we be doing any training in Tennessee? No, not planning to do any training. Let's see, in Florida, I don't have anything set yet for Florida, so, but that's something that's going to be getting set somewhere in Florida. I think it's going to be in South Florida. Will be where I'll be at in January. Any other questions that people have? I guess I can ask and take some questions. Let me know, and I can answer them before we shut down. Anyone? Bueller? Ferris Bueller's Day Off. One of the classic movies that's out there. Well, I don't see anything else. If there's nothing else, then I will let you go. Again, if anybody wants me to come to where they're at, this is how it works. You basically reach out, say, I want you to come, and then you end up setting up with your church and helping people get connected that way. So just talk to your pastor and then set up a time or reach out to me, and then I will come. And normally my kind of a minimum honorarium is like $500 for me to come, and then oftentimes they take an offering as well, so that helps to pay for my travel that I have, and they'll try to stay in that region for a couple of weeks or whatever. So anyway, alrighty, I'll let you guys go. See ya, bye.